So, hello everyone. This is FinEcon, and today we are having episode number 6. And we are honored to have Ibrakhim Ibragimkhodjaev, who is a CFA Charterholder, Wharton MBA graduate, and principal at Alliance Holdings, which is lower middle market private equity firm. And hello, Ibrahim. How are you today?
Hi, I'm good. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining and thanks for inviting me to speak.
Yeah,
I gotta
or
admit, I
accepting.
need some intro to who you guys are, where you based, because I know you're in Korea, as I understand, and the rest of the people are in Tashkent.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Most of
Okay.
the audience listening to this are from Tashkent or Uzbekistan, and they are mostly entry level, we can say associate or analyst, or studying at bachelor's degree. Yeah, like people newly joining to finance career mostly.
Got it. And it's the same school, right? In Korea, you are there, and in Tashkent, some of the people are joining from that school. But it's the same school, two different campuses. Did I get that correct?
Honestly, I'm not sure about the universities that people are attending to, but
Oh,
yeah, I
nice.
studied in university, and others from like different part of the Uzbekistan, and maybe their work at Big Four. Some of them, yeah.
Got it. Got you. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, I thought this was a school investment club. Apparently, this is an independent club where a lot of people.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
So thank you. And so for everyone who is listening to us, today we talk about doing MBA in the USA, especially doing MBA at Wharton, which is a prestigious university in the world,
Sure.
and also CFA for a bit. And finally, we're going to talk about career in finance and private equity. So before we start, Ibrahim, can you please introduce yourself because people may never heard of you before?
Yeah,
Thank you.
sure. Yeah, so my name is Ibrahim. I live in the US. I'm originally from Uzbekistan. I used to live in Tashkent until I was 17, and one day I decided um, to study in America, and a bunch of things happened in between, and I ended at a school called the Drexel University, which is based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And this was year 2008. And so I went to Drexel to do my undergrad. It was a 5-year program. I picked the finance as a major. They had a business school, so I concentrated in finance inside a business school. What was unique about Drexel was they had something called a co-op program, which is a program that lets you do internships 2 or 3 times during your studies. So when you're a sophomore, the school arranges interviews with different employers. They come on campus, you interview, and you get an internship. And what it means is, you're in school for a month, and then you'll be interning for 6 months. So you do that 3 times. So you're starting with sophomore year, then junior, and then senior years. And by the time you graduate, and this is something interesting about the school, you gain real world experience. So you already have 2 or 3 employers on your resume, which makes it super easy for you to get a first job. And so I did that. The BlackRock was the internship that I did during Drexel, which helped me tremendously. And then after graduation, I ended up getting a job with a group called JL Squared, which was a boutique investment firm based in Philadelphia. What they did was they had a couple of product. Their flagship product was a fund of hedge funds, which was a vehicle where you deploy capital into other hedge funds. You're not a hedge fund yourself, but you come in as limited partners in different hedge funds. So some of the biggest names you may have heard on the news, on paper, like Elliott Management, Pershing Square. We were investors in those funds, and a bunch of other different funds. So I started my career there at a company called JL Squared. But in addition to the fund of funds product, they did some other things on the side. So we had a TMT fund, long short equity fund, and we invested in private companies. And it was a kind of a well-rounded kind of a career education that I got at that firm, because I got to do a lot of different things, although I didn't become an expert in any of them, which is good and bad, right, at the same time. But mostly was good for me, which then, that experience helped me to get a job at my current company, Alliance Holdings, which is a dedicated private equity firm. So I've been with them for now, since 2019, so about 6 years. I'm a principal there. And my job is to it basically covers everything inside the investment life cycle. So from sourcing new investments, evaluating, talking to the founders of companies that we invest in, negotiating the documents, and then closing the deals. And then after closing, there's some portfolio management work, which I'm also involved in. And so, by the way, the MBA, the Wharton MBA, came in during my career at Alliance. I actually graduated last year, so I did the 2-year executive MBA program at Wharton, which is super helpful because, as you guys know, MBA is a 2-year program, like a traditional MBA, where you have to leave your job and then go to school for 2 years, and then after you graduate, you find another job, or you come back to your previous job. The difference between that and what I did was the executive MBA program at Wharton. It's essentially the same thing. So same classes, same professors, same credits, meaning number of classes that you need to take to graduate. But on a modified schedule. So full-time Wharton MBAs come, they have classes from Monday to Thursday, but we had class Friday and Saturday. So you're there at school all day, Friday and Saturday. And then sometimes they do like a week-long sessions where you have to actually take off from work and do that. So it was a modified MBA, I would say. But it was a great experience. I really enjoyed it. We traveled to a couple of countries, super smart people. Like you can tell from, I'll tell you, like Drexel, my undergrad, was a school maybe in the top 100, I would say, if you look at the rankings. It used to be in the top 100. I don't know where it is now. You compare that to a school like Wharton, which is part of the Ivy League. There's a tremendous difference. Everyone around you is super smart, and you feel like, oh, well, how did I get here, right? Because it's the level of talent is it's on a different level. So that's kind of where, like a short. I'm happy to dive into any of the pieces that I mentioned. So yeah, that's my background.
Yeah, thank you for the nice introduction. And basically, yes, that seems to be a really nice journey. And I want to kick off this MBA journey, since we don't have that much time to cover like bachelor degree and before that time. So I noticed that before you pursued your MBA at Wharton, you're still working as a private equity associate, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
So what prompted you to pursue MBA while you're having a nice job skill? And how did those 2 years change your perspective on the industry as a whole?
So I think primarily 2 reasons, right? Number one, I've always felt like there were gaps in my knowledge, right? Undergrad business school teaches you gives you like a good foundation of business. And then you obviously learn a lot of different things at work. And I did a CFA, which was, I will talk about it later, but it's a very technical stuff that's completely different from what you learn in MBA. I think what I wanted to focus on personally was more qualitative skills. Because as a finance guy, you focus on a lot of quantitative stuff, right? Okay, how do I build a DCF? How do I build an LBO model? And how do I price this, options, very, very technical. But MBA, on the other hand, is, it focuses mainly on, the strategy. Okay, how do you run a business? How do you run each different functions of a business? How do you deal with people? And things like that. So I was interested in learning that. That was one of the reasons why I applied for an MBA. The other reason is, I would say, maybe more US specific, maybe even global. There's something called target school versus non-target school. So when people talk about target schools, they're talking about, Harvard, Stanford, MIT, right? Columbia, for example, or Penn, Wharton. And non-target would be everybody else. So having that target school name on your resume and kind of breaking into the network of one of the target schools is a huge help in terms of a career. So that was my second goal. I wanted to have that that kind of relationships, that access to the alumni base of the school.
Yeah, thanks for sharing those two reasons. And still, it's interesting to know, like, yeah, you mentioned the term like non-target and target, and I heard a lot about this term, and to be able to break this chain, I can say, as someone who went from, I think I can say, like, non-target school, which is Drexel University, and I googled it, and I found out that its ranking is 700. Maybe I might be wrong, yeah, in the world. And how did you went from studying a non-target school to doing MBA at Wharton? And what advice would you give to those who want to get into top schools like Wharton or other target schools? How can we
Sure, yeah.
get prepared for that?
Great question. Yeah, great question. So it's a formula, right? There are a few components. So number one are the basics. So good GPA, good recommendations, and good GMAT score. That would be like the academic background. You got to have those, like, get 700 and above if you take GMAT. Have a GPA at least 3.5, whatever the equivalent may be in your world, and get that nailed down. And then after that, it's your work experience. It's important what you have done and whether you have made a good impact or significant impact at your role. And it doesn't have to be something like big, right? It doesn't have to be like you saved a couple $1 million for your firm or anything like that. It could be, just the demonstration of good work ethic, being a good colleague, or being a good employee, and then actually somebody from your work, if they speak to it, that's what you need. And then third, I would say a lot of people don't focus on this, is your the letters, the personal letters that you write to schools. I'll tell you this, I got into Wharton the second time I applied. So I had applied back in, when was it, 2017 or 18. That was my first attempt, but I had written the letters myself, which, I mean, you do write yourself, but then you need some help because these schools, you got to be very concise. You got to get to the point. You got to bring up only the important stuff for the school to read about you. So what I did the second time is I hired a consultant to help me with my essays. And what the consultant does for you is, you write your essay first version and you send it to them, and they'll send back some comments saying, okay, you're in this good direction, but don't talk about this. Instead, is there anything else you can mention in this area, right? So it'll be like back and forth between you and the consultant. They're not going to write your letter for you. I'm going to stress that again, but they will kind of hold your hand and walk you through this black box kind of a process of MBA admissions. And it's typically somebody who has worked at the admissions before, so they know what the admissions office is looking for. So that's what I did. So I had a good GPA, I had a good GMAT score, and then I got great recommendation letters, and I'd done some good stuff at work, and then I hired somebody to help me with my essays, and that's how I got in.
Okay, and regarding the work experience before MBA, what do you think? Which one would be better? Like working in a startup, but maybe C-level or higher level position, so you're gonna have a high impact, or working in a large corporation, but in a lower maybe position compared to the one that you may have on the startup. Which one would be better? What do you think?
Yeah, this is such a there's no right or wrong answers to this. I've seen many different people. Like in my class, there were startup founders, and there were people who worked at traditional big four, accounting firms, or pharmaceutical companies. So you can't. I think the short answer is it doesn't matter, as long as you can show that you are a top professional, right, within your field. And even you can be young, but there's a minimum, right? The MBA programs, I think, often require at least 3-4 years of experience, maybe 5. For EMBA, which is what I did, you need at least 10 years. But I'm speaking about the full-time because I think you guys would be kind of going after full-time programs. So I wouldn't worry too much about, what you do, where you work, right? Don't change your career because you want to apply to MBA. Don't think you have to go get a startup job or go join another company. But it is a plus. For example, if you work for McKinsey in Tashkent, yeah, it's a plus. If you can get that job before you apply, let's say you're planning to apply to schools in 3 years, yeah, it's helpful to go get into a consulting job, for example, or work for a venture capital fund. That's definitely a plus, but I wouldn't stress too much about it.
Yes, that's interesting. And now, from now on, we're gonna be talking about CFA journey, and maybe many people know that for sure. CFA is the most prestigious certification in the finance industry. Even I know that some people outside of finance may have heard of the term CFA. And based on my research, I found out that you earned your CFA designation while you're working in private equity roles. So how did you balance studying and at the same time working? And also, do you think the CFA is still valuable for private equity professionals today compared to going straight for the MBA?
No, I'll tell you this. Don't do CFA. Short answer, and I'll tell you why. So I did the CFA back when I was at Drexel, actually. I passed level 1 when I was senior, and then I passed level 2 and 3 2 years after my undergrad. But I was young, so I didn't know. I thought the same thing. CFA, this difficult, super difficult exam. Very few people pass. But later I realized. Right now I'm 12 years into my career in finance. It's not. It's a very targeted program. What I mean by that is, if you want to work for a hedge fund, right? Hedge fund that trades options, futures, so let's say does some quantitative stuff. Yeah, CFA is a good thing for that kind of career. But for private equity, and I'll tell you that almost no one knows about CFA in private equity. Meaning they know, they've heard about it, but they don't know what it actually is, like what it teaches you, how difficult it is. It's not well known in private equity. And it's right, it's a 3-year program. You're on your own. It's a self-study. You're reading 10, 12 books for each exam, spending like up to 300 hours studying by yourself in the library. And I've done it myself, which is a horrible thing. It's not fun, but it hasn't helped me a lot, and I know a lot of people who it hasn't helped a lot of people either. So again, unless you're going into hedge funds, I wouldn't focus on the CFA. Instead, focus on getting into an MBA program. Now, there are pros and cons, right? CFA is cheaper. Maybe you spend I don't know how much it costs today, maybe like $5,000-$6,000, and you're done for all 3 levels, right? It's a cheap program versus MBA, which could be up to like hundreds of thousands of dollars. But in terms of like where you guys are, and I have some ideas of where everybody is at currently in this group. If you want to go find a job outside the country, let's say you want to find a job in the Middle East, like Dubai, let's say, or Abu Dhabi, somewhere else. You want to do an MBA. You don't want to do a CFA. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense, especially if, let's say, based on the market of Uzbekistan, maybe Central Asia, so you think that CFA is not relevant?
I don't know about the markets in Uzbekistan. Do they even know? Like, do people care?
Yeah. I mean, this Samba may be based in such markets where they do not have that many hedge funds. So if they want to focus on hedge funds, then CFA would be a better option. But if their focus is different, then you don't really recommend doing CFA and go straight for MBA, right?
Yeah, because I mean, think about it, right? In Uzbekistan, let's say in Uzbekistan, why would if I were an employer, why would I ask anybody for the CFA? Because one, I know there are no financial markets there, right? Like even the private market is very limited. There are many transactions. You maybe you're trading stuff on the U.S. exchange, but I don't know how many funds are there in Uzbekistan. So I'll be honest. Even like, besides that, maybe you know the answer better for that market. But for the U.S., I wouldn't suggest CFA, unfortunately. I'm not sure if you already have started the level 1. If you have, it's a plus, right? Even if you have taken like level 1, level 2, it's a super, like, so much experience. You learn a lot. It's such a wide range of things that they cover in the curriculum. But if you really want to like get a good job, and I'll give you one example. So I was looking at, I have a brother who went to Westminster University in Tashkent. He's younger than me. He's 4 years younger than me. He wanted to get a job at McKinsey and BCG in Tashkent. And the first thing they asked was MBA. I was like, okay. So here's one example, right? And this is one data point, but I think you can kind of extrapolate that to other fields. If you have an MBA, it's kind of more widely recognized, I would say, across regions.
Yeah, that's true. Also, it's first time hearing someone who's a finance expert not recommending CFA, because we have other guests too. They also recommended like doing CFA. It's a prestigious. It really helps. But yeah.
I was CFA. I was one of the youngest. I did it. I finished when I was. I got all 3 levels done when I was 23, maybe 22. But I'm telling you, even though I did it, I don't want others to go through the same thing, right? Because just from my experience and experience from, I can name 3 friends, close friends who studied with me. They are in finance. They live here, we're in the same city. And I know other people, obviously, from my network in finance. Again, unless you're going into a hedge fund, I would do an MBA. Because what MBA also helps you with your career, right? Because they have on-campus recruiting. You are interacting with people. You learn how to deal with other people. They'll put you in groups. You work on group projects. There will be conflicts, and then you'll learn how to resolve those conflicts, right? In an MBA setting. And then they'll teach you like high-level business strategy stuff, which is, okay, how do you run a business? Okay, what is strategy, and what are the frameworks that you can apply when you're running a business? And they will teach you all like basic stuff like accounting, finance, the stuff that you find in the CFA will also be taught at an MBA level. But I believe the CFA is just too much, right? Like I still remember level 2, they'll teach you how to do Black-Scholes option pricing model by hand on the paper. And I used to be able to do that. I have no idea how to do it now. It's been 10 years. But why do I even need that, right? Ask yourself why, because you can always use Excel for it. Right? You can have like a conceptual understanding of it, but you don't actually need to how to price swap contracts or futures contracts. It just, again, unless you're in that field, you don't need it.
Yeah, thank you. And so let's end the part related to CFA. So we're gonna have the final part of the interview. So let's talk about career in finance and private equity. And can you tell us about, first of all, private equity and what private equity firms do and how they create value and how their daily job looks like? Because some people may never heard of the private equity. So
yeah, private equity refers to investment companies that invest in private companies. So if you think about the investment landscape, there's stocks, right? Publicly traded companies. You can buy stocks off, right? You go log into your brokerage account, you can buy a stock, you own a piece of that company. But how do you buy a private company that doesn't have a stock on the exchange? So that's where private equity comes in. Private equity firms pull together money to buy only private companies. And when they do that, they typically are buying companies entirely. So they buy 100% of the float, if you speak in the public markets parlance. So you versus in a private public space, you're buying very small percentage of the stock, right, of the company through its stock. So private equity, so they raise money from limited partners, so investors who give money for the fund to invest in private companies are called limited partners. And then the fund collects money into a fund and then maybe allocates into 8 to 10 to 12 different private companies. And the formula is kind of, and I'm simplifying this, right? It's more complicated than this. The formula is, okay, let's say there's a company, a private company, you like it, you think you can come in and do some things and grow, revenue, cut costs maybe. What you do as a private equity firm is you borrow some money. Let's say say a company costs $100, $100 million. You put your own 50 million from your own fund and you raise debt of another 50 million. So you're levering it, right? It's the same like as you buy, this is a bad example, like when you buy your house in the US, you put little money and then you're borrowing the rest from a bank called mortgage. So same idea. So you're using leverage to buy a company with the hope that the cash flows from that business that you bought will pay down the debt over the years, typically 3, 4, 5 years. So what happens is, as you use the money from the company you just bought to pay that 50 million debt that you raised at the beginning, will reduce the debt balance and increase your equity, right? So that's one lever, of value that you generate. And then the other is, if you have a good team, you come in and look at the company and ask very simple questions. Okay, why are we doing what we're doing, right? Let's say you look through your pricing policies, you look at your cost structure, your marketing strategy, your sales team. So you look into each different function of the business and ask a lot of different questions around, okay, can this be improved? And I'll give you one example. We own a company called HydroWorks, and I was involved in it for the past 12 to 18 months, pretty heavily and intimately. And the playbook is similar. As you work on one company and you develop that expertise, you kind of come up with your own blueprint of, okay, how do I create value inside a company that we buy? So I digress a little bit, but the private equity is that, right? You're buying private companies with the hope that you can lever it up at the beginning and then pay off debt, and then generate value inside the company. And generate value means, okay, you're doing all of those activities to increase EBITDA, right? Because that's how the value is determined in the market, because you're paying, let's say, 8 times EBITDA at the beginning. You hope that as you increase EBITDA, the same 8 times will give you a lot more value at the end.
Yeah, honestly, that's a really great and simple introduction to private equity. I thought that would really get complex. Yeah, basically that's buying like private firms which are not placed on the public market. And what do you think? What initially drew you to private equity in the first place? Why did you decide to get into private equity compared to other industries related to finance?
Yeah, so I've got exposure to a lot of different things. Like I said, at JL Squared, we used to trade stocks. We had accounts where we actually had a TMT fund, technology, media, and telecom focused hedge fund. Are you guys familiar with long short equity funds?
Yeah, maybe no.
Yeah, so they basically it's a hedge fund. Well, like, hedge funds usually what they do is they go long a stock and then they can also short the stock. If they think the stock is overvalued, they short it, meaning they bet against the price of the stock. So we used to have a fund, the TMT fund, where we used to do that strategy, which is, as an analyst, I would look into a stock and recommend it to my portfolio manager. So I've seen that part of the world, right? The publicly traded stocks, the hedge fund world, where things move fast. So one day you wake up and your stock is down 15%. What do, right? Versus on the private equity side, things are much slower. So the price discovery, it takes longer. So you buy a company for 100 million today, 1 month from now, it's still probably that price, right? Versus if you bought $100 million worth of stocks in the market, your investment goes either up or down, right? In a month, it may be down 20% or maybe up 10%. So there's a lot more volatility. Versus in the private market, it's quiet, right? You don't see the results of your investment until you actually exit the company. So that's one. And the ability to be more involved in running the company kind of drew me into private equity. For example, in my last job, I don't remember being involved in any of the stocks that we invest in, because these are gigantic companies, right? You buy a piece of the stock and you call the management team, they don't even pick up the phone, because unless you're a big investor, they don't talk to you and they won't talk to you. Versus in the private equity, you buy a company, you're kind of essentially become kind of managers over the management company, right? They report to you, like the CFO of the company, CEO of the company reports to you as an investor, which gives you a lot of kind of more ability to drive your own outcome. right? You can go in and question everything. And the company that I gave you an example of, HydroWorks, that's exactly what I've been doing past year and a half. And it's super interesting because you're not, although you may not be running the business, you're almost running the business. And that's super interesting.
Yeah, it really makes sense, honestly, comparing like other industries too. And people might be really interested, and they also asked me too. Like, maybe you mentioned early on a bit. How did you get into internship at BlackRock, coming from like Drexel University? Can you tell us about the process of the application, if possible,
Yeah,
and also
so
some of the skills that might be useful?
sure. Like I said, my school, Drexel University, had a co-op program. And a lot of employers participate in the program, meaning they partner with the school and offer internship positions to the school and its students. So, and it was very kind of systematized, right? When it's time for you to apply for your co-op program, you log in, the school has a website, you go and you log in and they're employers, and then you submit your resume to whoever you want to submit. And then those employers, after the deadline, they get back to you. Whether, if they select you, they'll get back to you, set up an interview. If they don't select, you go to another company. So BlackRock came through that process. So I didn't independently apply to the company, but it was part of the co-op program. And so BlackRock is the giant company, right? It has different lines of business. What the team I worked for was their money market team. Not sure if you guys are familiar. There's a product called money markets in the US, which are essentially short-term investment products. Meaning it's almost like a savings account, but it's liquid, right? You can trade it. You can log into your brokerage account and buy some money market funds. So it's part of a team that ran BlackRock's money market funds.
Yeah, thank you for describing the process. So I feel like university really matters then. If there is no such programs, then that would have been really difficult. And so my final question before we wrap up the session is, if you could go back and give your, let's say, 22 or 21 year old self one piece of advice, like you were starting at GL squared, what would that be? Especially in the world of like AI developing in.
Yeah. In terms of maybe more pertinent to what you guys are trying to do, I think doing an MBA earlier on would be a helpful thing. And for me, there are a bunch of different things, right? As an immigrant in the US, you have some constraints around your visa. Right, back then I couldn't go anywhere because the JL Square was doing, they were working on my green card, so I couldn't leave them right away. So I didn't have that flexibility of doing kind of switching careers, going to another firm, and etc. So I would say maybe for people like yourself who are in school currently and are about to, or maybe early in their careers. I guess doing an MBA early on would be a good thing, and it opens up so many doors and exposes you to different things, and helps you explore different careers as well, because it's kind of a point in your life where you could take a pause and think about, okay, what do I want to do next? Do I want to keep going? And if you're in finance, do I want to keep going in finance? Or if you're in consulting, do I want to stay in consulting? So there's like a moment, you get 2 years of kind of break to explore different things. And I think it could have kind of pushed me in different directions if I were to do it early on.
And what could be the important skills now for those who want to join finance industry as a whole, not just specifically private equity, maybe in general?
Yeah. So I think this is an understated, and a lot of people make a mistake of like, okay, I should focus on the skills, right? The hard skills. I got to know how to do X, Y, and Z, read about this and that. A lot of people underestimate the power of networking, including myself. I wish somebody told me when I was younger that, instead of locking yourself in a library and studying a book in corporate finance, it would be much more beneficial to me and my career to go out and talk to people, right? And I think the same applies to you guys, and wherever you are, just getting out there. And I think you guys are doing a great job. Like when I was younger, I never ran a investment, the club like you guys are doing here, which is super impressive. The networking with different professionals, whether you're peers or people who are older than you, much more experienced, will take you to great places. And I'll give you one example. That the current job that I got didn't come from applying to a job post, but it came through I had a couple of students from Drexel. We keep in touch. They live in the same city. They're like, oh, we're getting together for dinner. Do you want to come? And this was like 2018. I was like, yeah, sure. I almost canceled it because I had, sometimes you don't want to go to places, maybe it's far, you have, multiple excuses, right? Whatever it may be. Oh, I almost canceled it, but good thing I went, because one of the guys who was also a Drexel alumni, and one of the guys at that dinner told me he was getting a new job in New York, and he was like, so my position is open. Are you interested? So I was looking for a job at the time. So I was like, yeah, let me send you my resume. And I sent my resume, ended up getting a job at the end. So, had I not had that dinner, I don't know where I would be, right? It would definitely wouldn't be this job. It would be something else. So don't underestimate the power of networking. Go out and talk to people. And you don't have to be perfect, right? You're young. No one's going to judge you. Obviously, do well in school or wherever you are, right? Getting a good GPA is important. Reading a lot is important. But going out and talking to people is going to get you to many different places.
Yeah, that's really interesting point and advice, I guess. And yeah, thank you for your time, Ibrahim. That was really interesting and insightful interview I had. Yeah, thank you everyone for listening to this conversation, and who will be listening to this too in the next couple of weeks. Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Sure. Well, take care. Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate. Yeah, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right. Good luck with everything.